Hey, solopreneurs, quick note before this episode kicks off. This is part of the How to Grow Your Business series. I'm bringing in a whole bunch of experts between how to grow your business on LinkedIn to how to handle your team and make sure that you're managing your contractors the right way to really help you grow your business. I hope you enjoy these episodes and have a fantastic listen. Hey, solopreneurs, Gabe here. Today we have Meghan McCracken. She is the Chief Experience Officer of Scribe Media. She is responsible for the amazing experience that I've told you about in a prior podcast about me writing a book and authoring a book through Scribe. So she's going to share her wisdom. She's going to share some fantastic ideas on how we can take a book and use it to grow our businesses for long-term success. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Meghan, thank you for being on Solopreneur Money.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to have you on. You are the Chief Experience Officer for Scribe Media. And for anybody that's been listening to this podcast, I am like a raving fan of Scribe after having my book put out and everything like that. So I'm really excited to have you on, to have you share some of those experiences that you are, for lack of any other way to put it, creating for authors and people out there.
I'm so excited to be on and talk about it. And it's always fun to get to connect with what we call our author alumni. You are now one of our author alumni. And yeah, it's excellent to check back in and see how your book impacted your business and your life, and also maybe give some inspiration to people who want to do their own book.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. It's going to be a good conversation. But before we go there, I always like to hear your story. So you're now sitting in the role of Chief Experience Officer for this great, cool company. How did you get here? What's your story on getting here?
It's a pretty winding path, and it's not one that I usually recommend anyone trying to come up to a role like this goes through. I have had many different careers. I have worked in software development. I've worked in emergency medical services. I've worked in biz dev. I've worked all over the place, and it was a pretty winding path to get me here. But genuinely, what landed me with Scribe was I started doing freelance writing work. I'm a writer, and someone that I know started a company where they were helping authors write their books, and he was like, "Hey, would you like to do some writing for us?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I've got time on the side of being a software engineer," and I started writing books on the side, just moonlighting. And then about 8 months later, the newly minted CEO of the company, Javon McCormick, he called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come in full time?" And that was it. That was history. And since that moment, almost 6 years ago, I've held a bunch of different roles in the company, but not really by design. We were building the company. It was a fast growing startup. So I started out heading up the manuscript department and building that process and that department into something really big and robust, and then starting to build out the author experience, and that just grew and grew, and now I am chief experience officer.
So what does the Chief Experience Officer do on a day-to-day basis for a company like Scribe?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the answer is everything. Anything and everything. But I think the best way to really cement it and solidify it is that we are a very people first company. We put a huge premium on serving people, not really serving a bottom line or serving an objective, but serving people. And that's why my role at another company would probably be called something like VP of product or chief product officer. But we really don't think of it as products or even services. We think of it as experiences. And we allow our authors to really expose and dictate to us the experience that they want to have, and the experience that they do have during something as really difficult and emotional and personal as writing a book and sharing your story, and sometimes even unlocking that story. It really truly needs to start with experience. So my role on the day-to-day looks like anything from designing and incubating new services that we're going to start up, new experiences, to overseeing the current author experience that we have in creating books, and then marketing them to the world, sharing that story. And then also a lot of like systems and team dynamics in the company, a lot of setting up really solid processes, really solid teams and departments of people, and making sure that people are in the right seats, that they're interacting really well. And it's a big role. It's basically anything that goes into the experience of our authors or the experience of our tribe and our freelancers who help create the author stories.
So, I mean, a lot of times small business owners, because that's our audience, is solopreneurs, and they're used to doing absolutely everything
Yeah.
from, basically from getting the client to balancing the checkbook. I mean, all the different things that have to
Yeah.
happen. And so I guess, and a lot of that has to do, or a lot of the things that come in for like a solopreneur is a little what I would call market research. Like, hey, what do my clients really want? And how do I then craft that to then create that experience for us as solo business owners? So is that a process that you guys constantly are going through? Like, are you polling the authors? Are you polling people? Help me understand that process. Because I can tell you the experience that I went through was fantastic. And we can even turn the tables and you can ask questions of me if you'd like here eventually to kind of dig that out. But I guess my question is for you, what are the things that you're doing to kind of do that, what I would call market research?
Yeah, it's with a service like ours, which is it is both so niche, but also the audience for it is pretty much infinite. Almost everyone has a story that they want to share, and I would say that everyone has a story, and it's just if you want to share it or not, right? So having that experience be built around what clients are actually asking for, it really starts with just asking questions. And that is a principle and a value that is enshrined in our culture. We have a what's called a culture Bible, and it's a document, like a living document that we've been adding to for all 6 years. And one of the very first values in it is just simply ask questions. Start with asking questions. Start with curiously seeking to discover what is going on in the mind and heart of the person you're trying to connect with and serve. So with our authors, that when it comes to something like market research, it comes from really listening to people who are in the business space, in the storytelling space, hearing the kinds of things that they're saying. The birth of this company started from our one of our co-founders was just having dinner with a fellow entrepreneur, and she was saying, "Yeah, I wish I could do a book, but I just can't write, and I don't have time." And he was like, "Well, hang on, that shouldn't be a barrier. I know how to write, and I have time, and we could probably figure this out." And so something as simple as that, of just asking questions and listening, is really what it comes down to. When it comes down to the more technical side of it, we have a lot of ways that we listen online. We are really active on the platforms where our audience tends to live. This would be LinkedIn, Twitter. We're really active. We've really fine-tuned Google searches to make sure that we're listening to exactly what they're searching for and what they're looking for. And then as the minute someone hits our service and our experience, which is the moment they decide to even book a call with one of our author strategists before they're even doing a book with us, we're listening to everything they're saying. Our marketing team goes back and they listen to every single strategy call. They make sure they understand what is being asked for, what the resistances are, what the questions are, and all of that we use to then craft really precisely targeted content and content marketing, and even just speaking directly to that audience or speaking to new audiences that we didn't know were there. We just find them by listening. When it comes to authors that have gone through our service and through our experience, we have many experience touch points. We have an entire role that's your publishing manager, whose entire role it is to simply manage and craft an excellent experience and listen to you. We've got on the back end of that, we've got a whole book team with project managers and people in every single department managing every single deliverable. But that the reason we don't have, oh, you're on the phone with the project manager and they're going to tell you the next deliverable is, it is more than that. The experience is more than that. And guiding someone through such a complex and long experience, these books tend to take a year or more. It starts with just listening, constantly checking in on experience, constantly checking in on, hey, how's this going for you? Does anything feel confusing? Does anything feel tough? Is there any questions I can answer for you? And making that the primary driving factor of our experience is just listening.
Yeah, that's key. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, I my publishing manager was fantastic, and she modeled a lot of that. Like, all right, so where are you at? How you feeling?
Yeah.
How's this going? What do you think? So that was a very great piece of my experience as we went through. Um, so one of the like the purpose of having you on was to help people understand how that we can, you know, use a book to grow our business over the long term. But you said something a little bit ago that I want to make sure we touch on is everybody has a story, but whether they're willing to share it or not, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can tell you this: I had no interest whatsoever in doing a book, not at all. One of my buddies,
Ah.
we're out for dinner, and he's like, "You need to write a book," and I pretty much flipped him off. I said, "Nah, I have no interest in writing a book." But then the pandemic hit, and I had time, and I had some space, and I went, "Well, I got a little time. Maybe if I'm going to do it, this is the time to do it." So help me understand if someone feels like they have a story in them, and you touched on it a little bit ago, but I'd like to know the steps. Like, what would someone go through if they're like, you know what, I think it's time. I'm ready to write a story to grow my business. And I know there's a couple ways that you can explain that because you guys don't do what I would say novels. You're doing things to help people grow their business. So, what stories are you, best way I can put it is, looking for? And then what's the process that someone would go through?
So answering the question first on what stories are we looking for, the answer is any story that is going to serve an audience and solve a problem for them. One of the number one reasons that we gently reject people who come to us looking to consult on maybe doing a book is that they don't actually have the knowledge or they don't actually have the story that is going to aim sharply at a particular audience and solve a problem for them. That's really just the definition of a good book, is it answers a particular question or solves a problem for a distinct group of people. And one thing I say right off the bat to anyone considering doing a book is everyone has a story. Deciding if you want to share that story, if it's worth the return on investment for you to do so, that doesn't take away the fear or trepidation around doing so. A lot of people are like, "Well, I'm not there yet because I'm still nervous." And I'm like, "No, okay. Everyone's nervous. Everyone. We get to the very end. We get to, hey, your book is about to be published, and authors go, "Well, hang on, hit the skids. Wait, we're going to publish this thing? Hang on a sec." There's a certain nervousness around sharing not only your story, but it's your personal brand, to put it in the most, I think, business specific context. It is your reputation. And uh connecting a story that you have or knowledge that you have to share with, okay, now my name is on this and my reputation is on this. That's a sticky moment for people, and it can take a bit to get over. That's one of the things that we check in on a lot throughout the entire experience, and we will have tough conversations with authors, around month 7, where we say, hey, we're spinning around on this one creative decision, and this is ready to go and it's great, and you're still stuck on it, and could it be that you're just afraid to move forward? And it's totally fine if you are. Let's talk about that. We get into those discussions with authors because this is such a personal and emotional process. Anyone who is thinking about doing a book but is not sure if they should, it's usually for 2 reasons. It's the reason of, well, I don't know if I have a book. Is this knowledge or story actually worth sharing? Does this count? Is this a book? And then there's, I know I have knowledge and a story to share, but who am I to share it? Who cares about me? Why should they listen to me? Those are usually the two different sides. And often they go together. And it's a bit of imposter syndrome. Everyone's got the, well, who am I to do that? And what I usually say in response is, hey, has anyone ever asked you for this knowledge or story, or paid you for this knowledge or story? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, you have a book, you have a story and knowledge that will present value to an audience. That's a book. And as long as you have the subject matter expertise to back that up, that's a big thing that we demand. A lot of people come to us and they say, well, hey, blockchain's big right now. I want to do a book about blockchain. And we say, cool, what do you know about blockchain? And they say, well, I mean, I could Google it. It's, everyone knows. And we're like, okay, hang on. you gotta know about what you're talking about. But yeah, if you can get to a place where you can overcome that hurdle of, well, who am I to even be sharing this knowledge or story? And is this a story worth sharing? The answer is probably yes. And the answer to the who am I is everyone starts out having that feeling. Everyone starts out having that trepidation of who am I to be listened to, or will people listen to me? Will anyone care? And if you're solving a problem for them, the answer is yeah, they will. And you have to do it well. You have to do it at a high level of quality. That's where we come in. That's really the service we provide. Is not, we're not crafting the story. We're not writing the book for someone. We're really helping focus their story and knowledge through the lens of really high quality creative, which is what we provide. Really great writing, really great storytelling, really beautiful design, and high quality printing and publishing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember as you were talking about, hey, do I have a book in me, or who am I to write a book? My ego always has been pretty strong that I was like, okay, I could do it if I wanted to, but did I have a book within me was my big question. So when I reached out, I'm like, do I have a book? And they're like, oh yeah, you got a book. You're fine. Let's move on to the next step. So walk me through what's the next step. So someone decides, I have a book. They reach out. They're like, okay, yeah, we can move forward. What's the next step?
Yeah. With us, we don't go straight from, okay, yeah, you have a book, this is possible, to great, let's do it. We take a moment to determine, great, we know you have a book, you want to do it. So we've determined this is a possibility. Let's get on the same page and align on the outcomes that you're after. And this is a big piece that I think a lot of other creative firms, a lot of them do this, and some of them that don't, you can tell right away because the book doesn't end up hitting the outcomes that the author actually wanted. Teasing those outcomes out of somebody it can be tricky. Sometimes an author's not sure of exactly the outcome they're going for. Sometimes they'll say, well, I just want to share my story. Okay, but secretly, do you also want to sell a bunch of copies, or do you also want to drive leads to your business, or do there's all these actual outcomes that are in their head, and we first stop on, let's align on those. Let's make sure that we're moving in the same direction toward the same North Star, because we think of like an analogy I use commonly is we are like a top level Michelin star chef is essentially what we are. You're bringing the ingredients to the party, and we're going to cook them into a really fantastic meal. But the ingredients that you bring, they can be cooked into a bunch of different meals. And those meals would be, liked by a bunch of different tastes, and serve a bunch of different purposes. So it's important to know, hey, what are the outcomes you're after? If you want to sell a bunch of copies, let's talk about that. Let's align on that. If that is your driving goal, no, I just want to sell a bunch of copies. I don't really care about driving leads to my business. I just want to be a bestseller. Okay, great. Let's talk about that. Most of our authors are not in that camp because that's honestly not in the cards for most people. Bestseller lists are murky and honestly paid. So it's kind of a separate deal. But most of our authors that we work with, they're looking for either cementing thought leadership and building a status in a particular industry as a thought leader, and driving leads, driving attention to their brand or to their business. Those are ROIs that are very, very achievable with a book, especially for a first-time knowledge share author. And those are outcomes that we are really great at helping people hit. But starting off with, let's go through the why. Why are you doing this? What are you looking to get out of this? We start there. We write all of that down. We make sure we're super aligned on it before we get started with, okay, great, let's introduce you to your book team and your publishing team, and let's get you matched with your scribe, who's going to be the person who interviews you and writes up your content and works with you to fashion that book. And before we get started on any creative intake or ideation.
And that's exactly how it went with me.
Oh, good.
My whole process was, okay, what do you, yeah, it's literally step by step how it went. It was like, okay, what are you really trying to achieve with this? And what is the purpose of this book, so that we can then make sure we're all on the same page and keep pointing, like you said, towards the North Star. And I remember even a North Star document being reviewed more than once, making sure that it was all on the right page. So someone decides, all right, I feel like I have a book. I feel like I want to go down this road. And the topic and the title of this podcast is, how do we grow our business for long-term success or long-term growth with a book? So carry forward with that with me, if you would. I mean, what are you seeing happen for authors? I mean, how can authors and people just like me use the book to grow our business and go down that road?
Yeah, the key thing that I like to express here is that a book is a long-term business tool. So when you publish a book, you're going to have this initial big bang of attention, sales, people flooding your business with, oh, hey, I read your book. This is amazing. Hey, I heard you on a podcast. I read you on Forbes. And that initial like bang of attention, usually authors go, oh, wow, I got my ROI. And then that fades after the first 3-ish months. That kind of dies down a little bit. And then authors start experiencing the slow build of this snowball that just keeps bearing fruit for years. And we usually see authors come back around the 3-month mark and they say, oh my gosh, this was a crazy launch. This was so great. I got my ROI. And then they come back to us a year or 2 years later and they say, that's hilarious that I thought that was the ROI. I had no idea, because it just keeps bearing fruit. Another thing I say to authors is, this is a tool that is timeless. You're going to be able to use this for years to do another marketing push on it. You can go back to it for especially for content strategy. That's a big tool. You can use it as a great single source for really robust content strategy. You can probably get a year or more of a great content marketing calendar out of a book. Like a year or more across multiple platforms. And you can also do things like a second edition. You can use it to get you entrance to things like keynotes, TED Talks, podcasts. You're always going to be introduced as, well, I'm a best-selling author of this book. So it is a long tail on publishing a book. And that initial big bang is amazing. But what I try to counsel authors to consider is, where do you want to be in 2-3 years? What are you looking for on a year timeline? Because that's really more the amazing benefit of doing a book, is that incredibly useful, timeless, long-term marketing tool.
So what can people do if they decide to go down this road? What can they do to then, maybe what I would say, almost ensure more success versus not success? I mean, I understand using it as content strategy. What are some of the tools and the things that you guys are counseling people like myself? Because I'm about ready to hit the 3-month mark at the time of this recording, where we're getting close to the end
Yeah.
on my marketing piece. And so what can people do to make sure that this thing starts to bear fruit 1 year from now, 2 years from now? What are some of the thoughts that you have?
So two things that I say, if you want this to be a lasting tool, you need to do these two things. Number one is consistency of content. If you're an author, you've put a book out and people Google you, they kind of expect to find writing from you. They kind of expect that you're someone who has a voice out there on the internet that isn't just in a book. Now, that's not always true. There's plenty of people who publish a book and nothing else. But for most of our authors who are publishing a book very much in a knowledge share space, it's in a thought leader-esque space. People are then looking for thought leadership from that person. So a long-term content strategy that is consistent. Make sure it's something that you can keep up. Authors get really into, in that first 3 to 5 months, they say, I'm going to do Twitter every day and I'm going to post on Medium every day. And then it falls off. So what they've done is built an audience that has an expectation that then is abandoned. So make sure it's something that you can keep up with. Maybe it's one article a month. Maybe it's, weekly carousels on an Instagram. Maybe it's, one mastermind that you host on a LinkedIn live, sometime during a month. Make sure it's something you can keep up with. So that's number one, is consistency of content and making sure that your voice isn't just the book. And then number two, and this actually I would say is the bigger one, it's the number one indicator of success, is engage and connect with your readers. Engage and connect with your audience. You would be maybe surprised at how many authors go through writing a book with us, publishing a book, marketing that book, and then they're a little shocked that they have to actually go in and like answer the comments on their LinkedIn or on their Twitter, or they're like, oh well, but yeah, like it's great, I got all these comments. And I'm like, great, did you reply to every single one? Did you thank them for reading the book? Did you ask them to share their thoughts in an Amazon review? Did you push them to your website, to your blog, where your content is going to be ongoing? Did you ask them questions about themselves? Did you connect with them? Did you seek to know them? These are things that authors are like, wait, hang on a sec, wait, now I got to know people. You don't have to, but that audience will shrink. That audience will start to wane. Building an audience means connecting with people. And if you've published a book and someone has bought it, that means they've essentially exchanged money to know you. Reading a book is really akin to knowing someone. You're a big piece of that. The author is a big piece of that. They want to know you. They want to hear from you. So continuing that connection in real time is so impactful. I've had authors who have had, they'll have 20 reviews on their Amazon listing, and they on launch week, they get 20 reviews, which is really good for launch week. Wow, 20 reviews, that's fantastic. And I've had authors who are like, great, I'm going to let these reviews trickle in. And then I've had authors who every single comment on any platform that they're on, they connect. Thank you so much. What was your favorite part? Thank you for buying it. Thank you for reading it. I would love to hear what you think in an Amazon review. Straight up asking for a review. Just engaging. Your audience will be so happy to support you, because you've given them this enormous benefit of the knowledge you had to share that has solved the problem for them. They want to support you. You'd be shocked at how excited they are to do so, to share your story, to pass your book along. But you got to engage as a human, person to person.
Yeah, that's huge. And frankly, that's the new way of building businesses. And I got to tell you, I don't like doing it either.
It's hard for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care for doing it either. So
I have an author right now who we're doing marketing on her book in advance of her launch. So we've got this launch runway of content and general just audience building that we're doing. And this is an author who she has done keynotes to crowds of 5,000. She has done videos. She has done TV she did TV for like 5 years. And the moment I said, okay, so for your Instagram strategy, I'm going to want to work. We're going to do some micro video. We're going to do some stories. We're going to do carousels. And she was like, well, hang on. I'm going to be on video. Hang on. Who am I to do that? I don't think. And I was like, you do this all the time. And yes, they want to see your face. She's like, well, can't they just read the book? I'm like, no, they want to see you. They want to connect with you. So that's someone who is very experienced in a putting yourself out there context. And even she was trepidatious to start to actually individually connect. And it all comes back to, well, who am I to do that? Well, hang on, I'll let them read the book, but do they really want to talk to me? And the answer is, yeah, they definitely do. Just that. If they're buying your book, they definitely do.
yeah. And then there's this other little thing called time that is always a fantastic excuse. Well, I don't have the time to do that. I don't want to take the time to do that. And I think that's another little piece of the puzzle that does get in the way. But it's also one of those things that you really got to do, which is really interesting. Yeah. So what are some of the stories that you could share of, I mean, like, what has a book done for some of your clients? I can tell you this. I've noticed, people following. I've noticed people buying the books. I've noticed the reviews. I've noticed a little interaction, but I haven't seen at 3 months like this big boom of new clients coming in or anything like that. I know this is a long-term deal, but What are some of the stories of success that you've had, and maybe even some of the stories of failure that you've had?
Oh yeah, most of our authors, the vast majority of our authors report back after 6 months to a year. They're like, "Oh yeah, I this has paid for itself already in the attention and leads to my business." So, uh, money flowing into your business is a big ROI factor that happens pretty universally. Again, if you use it, it works if you work it. The stories of failure are pretty few and far between, but they are genuinely, they're authors who they put the book out and then didn't engage with their audience, didn't use it as a long-term tool. They really thought that just doing it was going to be enough, and it isn't. You got to work it. I've had authors who, on the success side, which is the vast majority of our authors, they have, I mean, 10x their business. I've had authors who were able to launch new businesses. I've had authors who had no intention of building a thought leader brand suddenly be inundated with requests for interviews and requests for content. And they say, "Whoa, hang on! I guess I'm a thought leader now," and then boom, they are, and build an entire thought leader brand and a new side of their business on it. I've had authors who, even in a space that isn't business focused, that is pure storytelling, so memoir or telling the story of a particular place or moment in time or event, their books have been optioned for movies. That happens actually all the time. And that kind of assurance of the specialness of your book and of your authorship not only feels great, but it's something that it does continue to slowly build as you go. I would say that honestly, the number one most heartwarming thing we hear from authors is they report back that, man, I didn't realize how much people were going to support me in this. It has been so amazing to see all of not just my friends and family and colleagues, but all of these people out there who have written me and said, "Your book changed my life. Your book changed my business. Reading your book was the best thing I did for my business this year." Those stories of helping people, of really serving other people's needs, that's where authors are just blown away. And those could happen at the 2 month mark, they could happen at the year mark. We have authors reporting back years later. They're like, "I just got a letter the other day of someone who said, holy smokes, your book changed my business and has 10x my business." And those are the things I think that authors never consider going into it, and they come out of it just feeling so great. That's the best part, I think, is the serving humanity piece of it, that is almost never on people's minds. I mean, a lot of people go into it saying, "Yeah, I just want to help people. I want to help people who need this information." And yeah, absolutely. But then as you're writing it, as you're marketing it, you get really sort of narrowed, myopic in on, okay, what are the returns here? What was the engagement on that post? What were the sales here? And you zoom in a lot, and then you start to get this feedback that allows you to zoom back out and say, "Wow, I've put something out into the world that made it better, that helped people." That is the best. That's what authors report back as saying, "I didn't expect this," and that's absolutely the best ROI.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's that, okay, this was actually worth it.
Yeah.
That makes it worth it. When you get those types of reviews and those types of comments and feedback, that's kind of life-changing stuff in my opinion. Not monetary, but in the soul. It just makes you feel good, like you said, that you actually put something out into the world to really help people and to change the world, which is um, that's a tall feat for a lot of people to kind of get their mind around, that they could actually change the world.
I think even the simple act of us sharing our stories and listening to each other is pretty much the thing that our world needs the most right now. It's the thing that is missing the most in our world right now. I get friends all the time. I'm in a more millennial age group. They have particular leanings when it comes to politics or social issues, etc., that I share. But I get them all the time saying, "Oh my gosh, you worked with this author who has such different views," and I'm like, "Hell yeah, I did." I want to listen. I want to know what they think. That's the only way that we can connect. And I believe so strongly in that mission of everyone has a story, and I'm not going to tell anyone that their story is not worth hearing. And I want everyone to hear their story, even if it's one that I don't end up really ascribing to or believing in. I still want to hear it. And I think that is the more like bigger picture, large scale mission that we're serving is just getting the world to start to listen to each other and share each other's stories and give each other permission to then tell their stories.
Yeah, when I was putting this podcast together, I was trying to figure out what I was going to talk about. I mean, really, financial planning for solopreneurs, it's really kind of boring. I mean, honestly. I mean, I've been doing this for 27, almost 27 years. It's really kind of boring. And I started thinking like, what would be great? And I'm like, stories. I love hearing stories. I love telling stories. And that was the whole kind of like when this podcast really started to take off, it was like, I get it. The stories. The stories is what we need. And that's why we start with your story. And then how can we help people? And so since I brought up finances and financial planning, et cetera, and this is a podcast about money, I'm going to use that as my very awkward transition, we'll call it. We're going to move into my 3 questions. So on this podcast, it is a podcast about money. All right. And like I said, financial planning for solopreneurs is kind of boring, although I truly love doing it. But there's 3 questions I ask every single person that comes on my podcast. And the first question is what's the smartest thing you've done regarding money? And tell me that story.
Yeah. So it sounds almost obvious and a little silly, but the smartest thing I've ever done regarding money is asked for money advice from people who actually have money, people who actually have wealth. There's a lot of advice out there. I think in the when you're younger and the adult world, you assume, oh, they all are on the same page when it comes to money, and they're not, and people who don't have money usually or don't have wealth, they usually don't because they have not had the best advice. So I grew up in a realm that what did not have a lot of money. I did not learn great behaviors about money growing up, and my parents very much did the best they could, but they didn't have the best advice about money either. So the blueprint I had for money, wealth, anything, financial planning, anything like that was like not non-existent and contained actually a lot of really bad advice, a lot of just like very easily disproven canards that are out there that just aren't true. Like a big one was a belief that was instilled in me that like money is very scarce and very hard to get, and that belief was just drilled into me, like there's never enough of it, it's really hard to get it. And that's, I found, not true. And but that mindset will really shift how you access money, how you approach it. So the turning point for me was when I started working at Scribe, and back when we were Book in a Box. One of our co-founders, who was the friend that I had who started the company, I mean, he's wealthy. He made all his own money, and he's very wealthy. And just listening to him talk about, oh yeah, of course I buy nice things with the money that I made from telling the stories about my life, like that is mine. Like, of course I would do that, and of course I'm investing my money to make more of it, and of course I'm building wealth. Why wouldn't I do that? And then especially our CEO, Javon, who started from negative nothing. I mean, if you've never heard Javon's story, it's wild. Started as a homeless youth with an orphan mother and managed to build himself up to like multi millionaire. And hearing his thoughts on just wealth and money and how it all works was, okay, hang on, because it was so different from what I had been told before by people who didn't have money. And then suddenly I was like, okay, hang on, these people have it and are building wealth and know what to do with it. Maybe I should listen to them instead. Maybe I should start thinking in their mindset. And that really changed the game for me.
That's huge. I mean, first you touched on money mindset, and money mindset is one of those things that you said it perfectly. You grew up in a money mindset, and we all grow up in a money mindset. It's just a matter is it a good money mindset or is it a bad money mindset? So that's huge. But then you had the wherewithal to go, all right, what I've seen does not seem to have prepared me or prepare me for the next step. Who around me could I learn from? Who could I ask questions to? Who could I listen to? So smart move. I love that. Very good.
The biggest mistake by far is the mindset that I just told you about. It's believing that money is scarce, believing that it's really hard to get. You have to scrape for it. You have to that you have to sacrifice yourself or your time. It's the whole buying into the whole. The only way to get money is to sell yourself or sell your time, which just isn't true. And it's an exchange of, well, I have to do this in order to get money to live. That mindset of like it's a sacrifice to have to get money, that was the biggest mistake. And it's weird calling it a mistake because it is just a mindset that I grew up in, but it led to huge mistakes in my 20s when I was just out of college, had absolutely no clue what I was doing with money, didn't really have any role models or anything to look to, and had this mindset of like money is really scarce, you're never going to have enough of it. And it led me to just make incredibly bad decisions and mistakes with my money, with my finances, that took a while to dig out of. It's the classic 20s millennial story of just like tanking your finances in your 20s, while also being saddled with, I also had very typical millennial story, just a mountain of student loans, which came from it came from the same mindset. It was like, well, you have to go to an expensive school because if you don't, you'll never make money. You won't go in. And then if you don't have money, you won't have it's all from that mindset of like, this is really scarce. And if you don't have it, you'll die in a box somewhere alone, So which is just not true. But it really led me to, take out mountains of student loans, which led me to then, well, now I got to do stuff to pay off this debt in my 20s. There's no way I can make these payments. What am I going to do instead? Just like snowball after snowball of bad decision, all centered around like money is really hard to get, and it's the biggest sacrifice of your life is just to get money, to be able to survive. Like it's a survival thing, which like obviously it is. I'm not going to say that like if you don't have money that like, oh, survival is easy. No, you do need it to survive, but the mindset around how to get it and the decisions to make with it. Even now, I'm in my mid 30s, and the decisions I've started to make regarding, okay, well, hang on, money actually isn't scarce or hard to get if you're thinking about it in the right way. And the kinds of decisions I'm making now, they're not for, oh no, I need money right now because I might not have it tomorrow. It's like, okay, well, no, if I'm looking at my financial picture as my entire life, it's all of the money, all of the wealth that I'm going to build throughout my entire life, then the decisions I'm making now, I might make different decisions. And my decisions have really started to change on the kinds of places I put money, the kinds of things that I buy, what I do with my money, that is much more on this long-term, big picture. All right, well, hang on. This decision I'm making right now, that's for when I'm 65. This decision I'm making here, that's for tomorrow. But thinking about it, not just as I'm living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, just to scrape. Yeah, that's the biggest change.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic growth. So, nice job.
Yeah. Took a while. Took a long time. Yeah.
You're there though, and the other thing, the whole thing about this mastery piece. I mean, because this podcast and my book is about mastering your finances to create the life you want, and the whole idea is mastery doesn't happen day one. Mastery is a process that happens throughout our lifetimes. So you are working towards mastery, which is fantastic. So, speaking of mastery, what does mastering your finances mean to you?
For me, mastery is in the behavior realm. So I've had for 6 years now since I've been at Scribe, not just with our co-founders and our CEO and many of our other tribe members, but also in working with our authors. I've written probably a dozen financial planning books, retirement planning books. I've had access to some of the best minds in the business, and been able to learn from them, which has been amazing. I've had that for 6 years, but just having the knowledge for me wasn't nearly enough. I had to really explore, okay, I have this knowledge and yet now I'm not doing it. What's why? What's the behavior there? And behavior for me, it really just stems from really deep-seated beliefs about scarcity in general, about what it means to care for myself, about what it means to really value myself and value the life that I want to have, what money even means. Our CEO, Javon, he always tells this story of one of the funniest questions he's ever been asked. And it was when I had gotten a promotion and I was making some more money, and I had like a really, I think everyone has this, that the really complex Excel spreadsheet that they've added to and tweaked for decades, and it's their thing. And then you move on to like an actual budgeting. It's like, oh, this is way better. But like you really buy into your spreadsheet for a while. And I had like plugged in the salary increase that I had gotten into this spreadsheet. And for the first time ever, all of my bills, everything, even all of the things that were like wants, were covered, and there was leftover money, like a big chunk of leftover money. And I went to his desk like in a panic, and I was like, Javon, what do I do? What do I do with this money? Where does it go? And he was like, you you just enjoy it, or it's freedom. That's all it is. You just have it to be able to do whatever you want. And I could not wrap my mind around that concept. And my behavior didn't match it. And for a year, probably, I had to find a place of like, well, what scarcity pocket can I shove this money into? And getting around the no, like you are worthy of freedom. You are worthy of just having wealth that just represents hard work and freedom to you. And you are also worthy of spending that money on yourself if you want to, if it's something that you want. Those behaviors took so long to work on. And for me, that's been the biggest factor in mastery. And I'm still working on it. There's still areas where I know what I should do with the money, and I still don't do it. And it is all about like deep-seated core beliefs that I'm working on unraveling in different ways. It has very little to do with discipline or knowing the information. That isn't it for me.
It's taking the right action.
Yeah.
Yeah, which goes back to your behaviors. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic, and opening up a little bit. So I appreciate that. So if someone wants to reach out to you, or if they decide they want to, take their story and see if it's worthy of a book, or they want to put it into a book, help me understand, where should they go? How do they find you?
So our CMO would be very mad if I didn't say, go to our website, so that then he can track exactly the way you went through, and we have that data, right? So yeah, go to our website, scribemedia.com. Everything you need is right there. It'll ask you questions about exactly what you're looking to achieve, shows you all of our experiences and services. We're not like a lot of other companies that are like, hey, call us for the price. We put the prices right there. We make very clear what kind of an investment this is. You will know exactly what you're dealing with before you even decide to have a call with us. Now, all that being said, that's a great way to do it. But I also just really love meeting people who are interested in this and talking to them directly. I always welcome just emailing me directly. It's just my name, Meghan. That's Meghan with an H, Meghan, at scribemedia.com. Shoot me an email. Let's talk. We're not a company that has a lot of gates to talking to people. If people, for instance, reach out on LinkedIn all the time to our CEO and are like, hey, what's up with this? And he'll answer directly. We love people. We love serving people and listening to and hearing from people. So yeah, shoot me an email if you want to talk. But also, yeah, go to our website. That helps us on understanding what people are looking for and what they need. And it's just scribemedia.com.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to share, Meghan?
No, I don't think so. It's been so nice talking through this stuff. I love talking about finances in general. I think for people my age, it's not something that we were ever encouraged to do. And it is something for us that still feels pretty foreign. It feels pretty like, oh, that's the thing that's not for us. So I love talking about this stuff, and also learning so much from authors like yourself. It's been just a masterclass getting to work with you guys on your books.
Well, thank you for being on Solopreneur Money. I truly appreciate it, Meghan.
Thank you for having me. So fun.
Well, Solopreneurs, thank you once again to Meghan for being on the podcast. I got to tell you my 3 takeaways. 1, if you would like to explore the idea of a book to help grow your business, go to scribemedia.com. Just reach out, or you can even email Meghan, like she said, and all that information will be in the show notes. The other 2 things that I got for takeaways out of that was money mindset and behaviors. Did you notice how she talked about money mindset, how growing up with a scarcity mindset and how she's had to work on that over time? And I know that's something that a lot of us grew up with. And it really starts to go away with practice, which is then those behaviors that, hey, by the way, if I make these choices now, it's going to start to make things easier down the road. And money mindset and behaviors are just like muscles. When you go to train those and you work on them and you keep making steps and moving forward, it starts to get easier and gets better. So my 3 takeaways: reach out to scribemedia.com. 2, work on your money mindset. 3, start to change your behaviors when it comes to that money and the money mindset, and it will start to really build riches and wealth so that you can have the life that you want. I appreciate you listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with a friend. If you have not gotten your copy of the Solopreneurs Money Manifesto, please go to Amazon and pick yourself up a copy. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for listening.